Hello and welcome to the Everything is Black and White podcast. Andrew Musgrove here. Thank you very much for tuning into the channel. If you're new around here, make sure you hit that subscribe button as well as the like button. Plenty of great content coming your way throughout the next few weeks and into the new season. Today's video is all about the man behind me, Sandro Tonali, expected to be Newcastle's first signing of the summer window for a price well above £60 million. One of the best young midfielders about. And the first thing to say about this transfer, that if there were any people questioning Newcastle's ability to sign the very best, Newcastle's pull, Newcastle's ability to sell the club to the very best, then this really should silence the doubters, because this is a huge statement sign. And plenty of clubs have watched this guy. And not only that, he's playing for one of the most famous clubs in Europe, and he's a boyhood fan of AC Milan. He's living his dream out. He's doing what Alan Shearer did at Newcastle United. So don't underestimate what a big signing this is. It's a massive move for him, but also it's a massive move for Newcastle United because they've persuaded him to leave his boyhood club. Yes, he's going to get a bumper pay rise, and yes, he's going to be playing Champions League football, but AC Milan qualified for the Champions League. They finished in the top four in Serie A. You know, to leave your boyhood club at the age of 23 as well, you know, he's been sold the dream. He's been sold something really special. This is a massive, massive statement for Newcastle United and Dan Ashworth, Eddie Howe, Steve Nixon to have persuaded a man of this caliber to join Newcastle United. And if you're a rival, if you're a competitor, I think you'll be sitting up and taking notice of this one. But why did Newcastle United want to sign Tonali? What's so special about him? Well, I've been looking at a few stats. And if I'm being brutally honest, the stats from last season, they don't jump off the page at you. They're not that special when you compare to the rest of Serie A. But it's interesting when you compare those stats across Serie A to those at Newcastle United. And then you start to build the picture of why Newcastle United have scouted this man, why they've then moved so quickly and so clinically to make sure he's a Newcastle United player. Now, the first question is, where will he play? Well, we know Newcastle United have been in the market for a central midfielder. We saw towards the end of last season how that position was really decimated by injuries. Joe Linton, Sean Longstaff, Joe Willock, Bruno had been playing through the pain barrier for many months. It was clear when Newcastle United needed to act. And before we actually get on to Tonali, that's one of the things that stands out about this deal, isn't it? That Newcastle United, they had a priority. They saw a problem position, and they've gone out and dealt with it within the first week of the window being open. That is so refreshing to be able to say about Newcastle United. And again, you know, Dan Ashworth and co deserve plaudits for acting so quickly and getting the remedy to what was, you know, an issue. Now, will he play as a deep lying midfielder? Will he play in that number 6 and allow, whether it be Joe Willock, Bruno, Joe Linton to flourish and push forward? You would think so. Can play as a number 8. I mean, the versatility of Tonali is key here. He can play in several different positions. I think he'll end up as that defensive midfielder. There is a bit of debate to whether he will or not, but I think he probably will. But as I said, he lends himself to many positions, and that, as I say, versatility is absolutely key. But as I mentioned, the stats that he got last season, they don't jump out when you look at them in comparison to other players across Serie B. I mean, if you look, for example, passes completed, 1,185 passes, ranks as 64th across Serie A. You know, tackles, 64. He ranks as 30th across Serie A. You know, he's not in the top 10 for anything really. Crosses, okay, he ranks as 12th, and that's his highest position, 130 crosses. Again, nothing really jumps out at you. But then if you compare that to Newcastle United's squad, and this is, bear in mind that Newcastle United finished 4th in the Premier League and qualified for the Champions League and were superb, weren't they? The midfield was superb, but we knew upgrades were going to have to come in if they were going to maintain that next season, if they're going to enjoy the Champions League journey as well as still compete for hopefully what is the top 4 next season. An upgrade was going to have to come in. And this man, when you compare the stats, definitely looks like an upgrade. So I mentioned there, passes completed, okay, 1,185. He would, in the list of Newcastle United players from last season, go in at number 5, okay? Let's go on to tackles. Like I say, 64 tackles. He would rank number 4 in Newcastle United. 41 tackles leading to possession. He would rank third at Newcastle United. 35 tackles made in the defensive third of the area. He would rank third again at Newcastle United. 90 tackles and interceptions. He would rank fifth at Newcastle United. Touches, he would rank fifth at Newcastle United, 1,836. 1,007 of them in the defensive third. He would rank third at Newcastle United. Carries of the ball, 937. Now, he ranked 66th across Serie A for this. He would come in fifth again for Newcastle United. He carried the ball 5,641 yards. He would rank third at Newcastle United. 2,809 of those were progressive, so i.e. going forward. He would rank fifth from last season for Newcastle United. The big one, probably that does stand out, 130 crosses last season in Serie A. Now, he ranked 12th in the league for that. You compare that to Newcastle United players. Now, Trippier is in a league of his own, 393 crosses. The best in the Premier League, if I'm not mistaken, but by far the best in Newcastle United, because second in that list is Jacob Murphy with 53. So this man, Tonali, would instantly come in at number 2. And that's quite interesting because he's predominantly a central midfield player, but he can clearly get down the wings and get the ball into the box, which is bread and butter to the likes of Callum Wilson and Alexander Isak. So, like I say, stats don't tell the full story. And if you were looking at his Serie A stats just individually, then you might be thinking here, sitting, scratching your head, thinking, well, why have they spent all this money on him? But when you look at where he would rank in the Newcastle United squad, you can clearly see that he is an upgrade on what is there at the moment. And, that's not talking down the likes of Joe Willock, Sean Longstaff, Jacob Murphy, not at all. All fine players, all players who would play a massive part in Newcastle United's future, the season, next season, the Champions League journey. They're going to be there. They're going to be instrumental. And what you hope is with that added bit of quality and the competition that Tonali brings, they will step it up a level. Just as they did last season, they went up a level, didn't Jacob Murphy? I mean, who would have thought sitting here who's saying Jacob Murphy plays a key role at Newcastle United next season? Raise your hand, because I'm going to be honest, I don't think many people watching this, if they're being 100% honest, will be able to admit, will be able to say they thought Jacob Murphy would still be here going into the new season and playing a really important role. They upped it last season. The signing of Tonali, I think they'll up it again. And we'll see these players who maybe people thought they'd reached to that level, they'll go another level. That's what Newcastle United want. That's what Eddie Howe wants. They want that competitive edge. Tonali will help bring that edge even more to the forefront. He's going to be a really good signing, I think. The fact the likes of Chelsea were in for him as well, other players, he's going to be a big signing. Under 21 international for Italy. I mean, this is a really big statement signing. And I asked for your opinions on Tonali. What stands out about the move? Because it is grabbing headlines, obviously not just here on Tyneside, but across Europe. So let me read you a few interesting comments here. So Mark says, nice to see the club going about their business early in the window. They clearly have a list of targets they want and will do their best to get them. He says, I don't know anything about Tonali, but trust the club entirely. And that's what a lot of people are talking about. You trust the club with their decision making. And to be fair to them, the moves they've made in the transfer market so far, across the, since the new era began, they've got very little, if anything, wrong at all. You trust that Steve Nixon and his scouting department have scouted these targets extensively. Then Dan Ashworth's gone and got the best deal for the club. And Eddie Howe knows exactly how this player is going to fit into his side. So the trust element is really important, I think, between the fans and the club, that actually there's that belief that the club know what they're doing, that the club want to improve. They're not going to stagnate. They're not just going to stand still like they did under the previous owner. This club means business, and signing Tonali, as I say, is a statement to really reaffirm that. Jamie says, signing Milan's golden boy, who also happens to be a boyhood fan, is huge. Beating them to Botman was one thing, but this is a local boy. And whilst Milan have some financial issues, they're still in the Champions League and will likely compete for the title again next year. It's a big statement. Geordie Tune for Life says similar. For me, it's convincing a young lad who is a Milan supporter and playing for a massive club. as we've mentioned, I mean, you can't really look past that. It is huge to persuade him to move to Tyneside. GC says Newcastle are a massive draw globally. It's becoming easier to convince the best of the project. We act fast when there's a player in the crosshairs and won't waste time. And he's also very happy at the fact that it came blue, which is a fair conclusion. It did. It's come out of the blue, hasn't it? Really, they were linked to Borrella. They've been linked to other players, but there weren't really too many whispers about Tonali. I mean, we knew the position they were going to look to strengthen. As I mentioned, it was always going to be a centre midfielder first, but they've really, really gone and got this man under the noses of other teams, and just like a few people have been saying, out of the blue. Lambeth Mag backs out as well. The fact that it was completely under the radar is what excites him. And I think everyone's just really, really excited. Ben says the fact we can now attract elite players, it bodes well for the project. Toonami says the ambition of the move, Trippier, Bruno, Botman, and Isaac with statements in certain ways, but to swoop in and take one of the top up-and-coming midfield talents in the world from AC Milan, semi-finalists in the Champions League, no less, he reminds everyone. It's a statement of intent. Mark says Tonali is class, exactly what we need. And I love the fact no one knew we were after him. Statement signing. Ryan says it's a mixture of ambition, tenacity to get the deal done, and generally how we've gone about the business. And that's the other thing, Newcastle United, Dan Ashworth's gone out, concluded that deal, trying to get the best deal for the club. But what I really like about this deal as well is that there's kind of an acceptance that although you want to get the best deal for your club, of course you do, that you can't just lowball teams when you're going in with a price. You're going to have to pay the going rate in many ways. Now, you speak to people in Italy, and some believe that anything above 50 million means Newcastle United are overpaying for Tonali. Well, okay, that's their opinion. They've obviously seen more of that midfielder than I have, and then than probably you have. But what I take from that is that the club of when they're negotiating, they're negotiating fairly. They're not going in and trying to, say, right, if someone's wanting 70 million for the player, I think it's fair to say under the previous ownership, they'd probably go in at 25, 30 million and really try and get a low deal, pretty much offering the deal that you knew was never going to happen. And then you haven't moved any further forward and getting that priority signing, This Newcastle United, they know what they want. They know why they want it, but they're also playing fair in many ways. They're not trying to lowball teams, and they know they will offer an amount which they deem is fair, but not insulting. And I like that. They mean business. Then they've not got time to waste. They don't want to waste their time. So why offer a really low offer, which you've got no hope of accepting? Negotiate, but negotiating sensibly, I think, is absolutely key here. The fact that they've now sent the medical staff over to Romania, where Tonali is on international duty with 21s of Italy, is also massive. They're not wasting any time. They're not dilly-dallying about this. They're going to get this man over the line. They're going to get the medical done and dusted, and we'll see him in Newcastle United shirt relatively quickly, you would imagine. And you just love that. Get it sorted, move on to the next big deal. This is Newcastle United moving forward, not standing still. And again, I think their rivals will be taken note. I think a few of them will be rattled because Newcastle United are showing they are a big club. They're not acting like a big club. They're doing exactly what big clubs do, seizing the initiative, seeing opportunity, going forward, getting it done, getting it signed off. And you absolutely love to see it. And I think for some Newcastle United fans, it might take a little bit of getting used to, because they've had so many years of it not working that way. So many years of waiting for deadline day and trying to grab a bargain, not paying for loan fees, getting the helicopter out. Look, this is a totally different Newcastle United. They mean business, and they are showing it with the way they've gone about this. Not just the signing, not just the ability of the player, but the way they've gone about it. They're showing that they are a big club. Let's go back to the comments just briefly before we sign off. John says the professionalism we now have with the appointment of Dan Ashworth, we run like a big boy club now. Diona says, reminds me of Trippier signing huge early statement of intent, which will attract others to buy into the project that they are building. Arnie just says, I'm just in dreamland. Burst of the Star says, statement signing that will attract more players of a higher level. And yes, the decisiveness of the club and how far apart it is from where we were before the takeover. Ross says it's ambition, building on top four success and wanting to create a squad who can genuinely challenge for trophies. Also, the age criteria is perfect. Spine of the team will reach the prime together, which is a very good point. Ganok just says the team's progressing. Everyone's just really, really excited. David says, like Isaac, it's the suddenness and the speed of the signing. Like that, isn't it? And it'll be interesting to see where they turn to next. Eric says, I like how quiet it was. No one was talking about him. Ashworth playing his cards close to his chest and runs a tight ship. Ginger Tonioli, who's changed his name from Ginger Perlo on Twitter, interestingly. He says this guy could be worth 100 million in a year or so if Eddie does this thing. But then again, Newcastle aren't a selling club, so if he's worth 100 million, don't fret. He won't be sold, will he? Kevin says he's enjoying the efficiency of Ashworth. People saying this is his boyhood club, but you'll never leave for Newcastle United. Ashworth turns up to a meeting and the deal is done. It's really impressive. I say everyone is absolutely buzzing about this. It's pretty much done and dusted. I imagine you'll see it confirmed, if not over the weekend, the early part of next week. And then Newcastle United will move on to other targets. They need a left back in. Still interested in Madison, although Spurs edging ahead. Obviously, a lot of people talking about Szoboszlai from Leipzig. Now, they've gone and signed a couple of attacking midfielders in the recent days. But, of course, they've lost their star man to Chelsea and Nkunku. So, that's probably a replacement for him, you would imagine. Not necessarily a sign that Szoboszlai is just going to leave. But Newcastle United still holding interest there. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there. But you would imagine he's going to cost in the same price region as Tonali. So a big couple of weeks to come for Newcastle United. Very important they're getting the deals done really early on. You'd like to think they have the majority of the business done before they head off to America in the latter stages of July, so everyone's settled in, meets the new teammates and can get right to work. One to watch, that's always I want. But yeah, the excitement this weekend, all about Tonali. Got an assist playing for the under-21s of Italy as well. People were loving that. Looked really good, didn't he? Got a bit of speed about him as well, which is good to see. But yeah, the excitement's building. Head over to chroniclelive.co.uk for all the latest Newcastle United news, and we'll catch you very soon.